From doom and gloom to va 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 boom, we'll get into what was a fantastic weekend for the Cleveland Guardians. After a week opening day, they come back to take the next three on a solo edition of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kicking It Old School style of Locked On Guardians. I'm running this through OBS, so you might notice it was the old video at the start there. I'm experimenting, trying some different things. I've had some computer issues tonight, and it's still going to be a fun show. There's a ton to cover, which I tell us to never phrase it that way. 3 games. Tomorrow's an off day. No, is tomorrow an off? Yes, tomorrow's an off day, and then Oakland on deck. There was also some minor roster maneuvering, and by that I mean in the minors. But first, I want to take a moment and tell you, download the Ultimate Baseball GM app. I love this game. Try it for yourself. This game is definitely for you. Download the game. Just visit ultimatebaseballgm.com or look it up in the App Store. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game. I enjoy that game quite a bit. I just finished my second 25-year run. I'm smashing it in that game. But before that, I want to say thank you for checking Locked Out Guardians. We have you covered today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And let's just dive into the games. That's the big focus. We'll push what happened in the minors to the back half of the show, because we do like to give players who were let go their due, like to give those guys an opportunity. So let's start with, just before we get into these games, I was pulling up some statistics. I got the 2 computers running here. If you were to say, it's super early to look at numbers, let's be honest with that. But still, if we are looking at numbers, the only 2 players after this week who have an OPS over 700 are Andres Gimenez and Mike Zunino. Mike Zunino had the first 3 extra base hit game by a Cleveland catcher since Carlos Santana way back in, let's see, I have that, I know, sitting in front of me, and then I scroll down, since 4/7/2013. Kind of funny how they're both early in the season. That was Carlos Santana against Tampa. Now, it's not all been great. The blocking, the passed balls, that's been a massive issue for him in the early going. It stands out as a massive issue, but we'll get into that in the individual games. And Andres has looked every bit as good as a year ago. No struggles for him. If I had one complaint through the 3 games after Friday, it would be I still don't love Naylor playing against Robbie Ray. I think we really need to platoon him. That being said, he's got the 3rd best OPS on this team right now. So we will have to still bear and see how that goes, but it's something to watch. I was texting with Justin today, and I said, I've always done my 3 stars. So I was telling him, like, my 3 stars for these 3 games for this week, if I'm setting up and doing that, would have been Andres Gimenez, Aaron Zavala, and then the bullpen. And I feel like that ended up being, something we saw go into today's game. But first, we're going to kick it back to Friday. So, Thursday was rough. The 3-0 loss, not the 4-0 loss. I know I had that wrong in the now, and that's because we're trying to do a new thing, and I was fighting with it. Cleveland managed to have 9 runs in this game. And what was great for me as someone who has watched this team and had my concerns was the sheer number of walks. Yeah, they didn't have any home runs, but 8 walks in this game. And the bottom of the lineup, 4. Again, it's weird that Andres Gimenez is hitting 7th when he is arguably your best hitter over the last 365. But he was down there hitting 7th, and he had 2 hits and a walk. Who reached base multiple times? Well, Zunino, Straw, Andres Gimenez, Oscar Gonzalez, Josh Naylor, Jose Ramirez, Josh Bell. Pretty much everyone is your correct answer. And, it was a little bit back and forth early on, and then Cleveland just put this one out of reach and kept reaching base and kept doing damage. Hunter Gaddis was all right. 4 Ks. It was an okay performance. He's not really stretched out to go more than 4 or 5, so you'll take it. Then the bullpen. I mean, Sandlin, great to see him after his injury issue a year ago. had kept him out of things for a bit. Then you keep going through and you look at the rest of this just squad. Morgan, De Los Santos, Trevor Stephan, Emmanuel Clase. Everyone stepped in, delivered, and was fantastic. As a matter of fact, Sandlin and Morgan were the only ones who gave up a hit. Eniel, Stephan, Clase, no hits. Missed a ton of bats. Looked really good in this game. If I was doing my box score bingo, which if you're a new listener was something I did a year ago, but since I'm going solo tonight, we'll do it. 13 hits for Cleveland, 8 walks, and 3 errors by Seattle. It's quite a bit. So you get about 24, and that would typically yield about 8 runs when we've looked at this in the past. Cleveland had 9, so they overperformed. The other side, 7 hits for Seattle and 3 walks. I didn't look at the hit by pitches, so I feel like there probably was some. Pitching's been a little wild in the early going, but that's about 10. That'd be about 3 runs, so 4. So it was a little bit high. To me, the stars of the game in this one. Can I just give it to the bullpen for one of them? Andres Jimenez, I think, has to get the other one. And then if you're just looking through, you got to go Steve Kwan. It's only the 2 hits and the 1 walk. 5 RBIs are a bit gaudy, but it's more the guys in front of him. The bomb of that lineup getting on base. 2 hits for Straw, 2 hits for Zunino, 3 hits for Andres Jimenez. Each had at least 1 walk. Zunino with 2. They set up the top of the Kwan to be successful, and that's what got them the win in the Friday game, which was honestly the one I had the least faith. Excuse me. I know everyone loves the cough in the mic. The game I had the least faith in this series. So let's move on, discuss Game 2. Oh, I got these in the wrong order. Here we go. Game 2, a 2-0 affair. This was another, great pitching matchup, and luckily for Cleveland, who managed all of 5 hits, and they only had 3 walks. So you look at that, that's about 8 opportunities for them. You'd think that's about 2.5, 3, close to 3 runs. They got 2. Other side, Seattle had their 3 hits, but they only had 2 walks. So they only had 5 total opportunities that should typically come out to about a run. But all they had was that La Stella double in terms of extra base hits. Gallagher had a caught stealing. They also had a stolen base. It was a great job by both pitching staffs. It's just Aaron Savale pitched like how we had hoped he would pitch in the postseason. If he's healthy, I apologize again. If he's healthy, I don't think he's necessarily, we're expecting him to go 7, 3 Ks, 2 hits, 1 walk. Low K is always going to be an issue. Like, he'll have his ups and downs. This was a stellar performance. If this was later in the year, he might have gone the complete game shutout. For a guy who had some health issues a year ago, you're kind of limiting him with the 80 pitch count. I think that is the smart move. I think the 3 stars in this one: Savale, Naylor, Jimenez. You got the 2 extra base hits. Who reached base twice in this one? Just Naylor, or no? Naylor did not. Jimenez, and then Josh Bell, who had a pair of walks. Bell has been walking at a high rate in the early goings. And, we'll save this third game and my overall thoughts for the series for segment 2. But I do want to say, at the end of the day, I still feel like Jimenez, Savale, and the bullpen are the 3 stars in this one for the overall series for me. One can make a Mike Zunino case, though. One can make a strong case for Zunino. It's just, who would you knock out? Savale, who went 7, shutout innings, is probably the guy I consider, because how good and how important Jimenez was in all of their wins. Now, Zunino, the knock on him is just the number of passed balls. It was a lot in the early going of this series. And it's, something that, again, we're going to have to watch. That new metric that came out this winter that we discussed in the show that said that, he is not good at stopping the ball. And we're seeing that in the early goings. And, yeah, we can debate whether or not he's just rusty and he'll get better. But I have my concerns. I'm sure everyone else does as well. But we'll be back to talk about an exciting extra inning Game 4 in the early going of this season. But first, let's talk about maybe my favorite sponsor. Has Ultimate Pro Baseball GM passed Built Bar? They might have. I've spent more time with Ultimate Pro Baseball GM right now than I have with Built Bar. And that's not a knock on our good friends at Built. It's just I enjoy this game. Like I said, I've completed 2 complete franchise runs. I was hoping they would let me count both so I could win all the money in this league, because we have a competition right now. The game put up a league, and as we enter our data and complete our 25-run season, whoever has the best not sure if it's point total because there are you get bonus points for things like, winning awards, or if it's just straight wins. But I feel very good about my chances of getting that first place. It's not super complicated. Once you get a handle on it, it moves quick. You just start going through seasons very quickly because you are the GM. This isn't a management game. This is a GM game. So go today and check out Ultimate Pro Baseball GM. Locked On Guardians listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. Okay, let's talk about this extra inning game. Now, I had to watch it with sound off as it was I was hanging out with my son as this one was happening, and he kept when the volume was on, he kept trying to grab the tablet. He is he's basically 19 months. So there's baseball doesn't quite get his attention full on yet, but he would want to grab the tablet and play with it. So instead, I kind of had it on a silent and was watching it, and frankly, that worked for me anyways. It was a game that was frustrating at points, but one that ultimately I think was, if you are a Guardians fan, it's hard to feel anything other than ecstatic about how this weekend played out. 6-5 win in extra innings. Trevor Stephan gets that extension, gets the save. Stephan and Jimenez have both been great since that extension was put in. For the Guardians, let's just do the box score bingo of it all, like I used to talk about. Who reached base more than multiple times? You had Jose Ramirez do it. You had Josh Bell do it. You had Mike Zunino, of course, do it, and you had Miles Straw do it, who also is walking at a very high rate. Zunino went 3 for 3 today with, if you missed it, 2 doubles and a home run, 3-run shot to put them up early, and it was not the. It was also funny watching Josh Bell try to steal a base in this one, if you want some comedy. But Miles Straw got his second stolen base, and that reminds me, I want to go back to Friday night's game. One of the worst calls we'll see all year was when Straw was called out. I know it got overturned anyways, but my goodness, did the umpire or the second base umpire think that you had to get your knee past second base to be safe? I don't even know what he was thinking in that one. It was a very odd moment in that game. But we have definitely seen them running a lot in the early going. I'd like to see them actually run even more than they did overall. But going through this game, the 5th inning, right? That's where they tied it. No. Yes, it was the 5th inning where they tied it up. You got the pass ball / wild pitch. You get the error at first base by Josh Bell. Everything conspired against them. You just felt like things were going to go sideways. Quantrill, not his strongest performance, continuing some of the struggles we saw in the preseason and in the World Baseball Classic. But again, the bullpen. Tim Herrin becomes the first pitcher since the 1800s to face 4 batters and strike them all out. 1 1/3 innings, 4 strikeouts. It's about as good of an appearance as you can make. Sandlin's great. Morgan, it got a little dangerous, but he pulled through, allowing the 1 hit. Eniel picks up the win with a perfect inning, and Trevor Stephan. You get a little bit nervous with the runner placed on second, but he took care of business in this one. The overall box score bingo, Cleveland had 9 hits and 5 walks and intentional walks, so they had 16 base runners. On the other side of things, there were 2 walks and 9 hits. So actually 17, because I forgot the error, and then 12. So 17 would be close to 6 runs. Cleveland had 6. The other side, they have 13. That's close to 4 runs. Seattle ended up with 5. This was the catcher game. Cal Raleigh had a double. Cal Raleigh had some big hits throughout this series. Zunino, though, had the bigger hits. Your 3 stars in this one, I really think one of them has to be Zunino. Again, a game that we haven't seen from a catcher in a while. After that, the question, I think the bullpen, I'm just tempted to make it a general bullpen game. And a special shout out maybe to Tim Herrin in particular, since it was his major league debut. You can go back and listen to the episode where we had Tim Herrin on this very show to find out a little bit more about one of the players you may not be as familiar with. And I think one of the important takeaways listening to today's show when I did get chances to listen, was the fact that it sounded like Tim Herron was always going to be on this team, that right now Hunter Gaddis and Xavier Curry are the ones who are the additions due to injury, that Herron is where they kind of always expected him to be. And it's not going to always be perfect for him, but what a debut for the young guy. And again, I mean, the bullpen, just a fantastic performance all weekend. It's another reason why I talked about this being the best bullpen in baseball. And the other thing that stands out is, this was a coming home for Mike Zunino, and it kind of showed, right? Boy, was he utterly fantastic over those, 2 of those games he played in. He didn't play in all 4, and the first one, not so great. But and defensively, issues. But offensively, he gave us a force at the catching position in terms of hitting that we really have not seen in a very, very long time. Now, something we missed, and I'm going to start here in segment 2. I guess before we dive into something we kind of missed and get a chance to talk about, I did want to comment, Oakland's on deck. This is a series that Cleveland should be dominating. Oakland is not a good team. I haven't checked in to see how they are doing. I would like to see Connor Capel do well, as someone who's been a longtime fan of his since when he was in Cleveland's system. I was happy to see him make that team, but it's hard to look at that Oakland team right now and not kind of feel angry at Oakland. As great as Zunino's been, I still would have loved Sean Murphy, and Oakland cut Christian Pache and then traded him for pennies on the dollar, and he was the number 2 piece for Matt Olson, who, by the way, is someone else that Cleveland really tried to bring to town. We're very much competing with Atlanta, and thought they thought they were near the finish line on a Matt Olson deal. Don't get him a year later. Thought they were close on a Murphy deal during the season. I don't know how close they felt in season, but they just haven't. For whatever reason, Oakland has liked lesser pieces. We'll have to see how Estuary Ruiz does, but my goodness, imagine right now having your number 2 piece in the your trade for Matt Olson, and you're cutting him for some career minor leaguer types, some guys who have not really been able to break in, and Ruiz hasn't played that much. He's only appeared in 2 games. They're not even having him play every day. So it's a pretty ugly situation for this Oakland team that's coming to town. Pitching matchups, Kaprielian versus Plesac. I'm sorry, and that is tomorrow. That is Monday's game. I was wrong. So it's trying to think, maybe it's this month where it's Thursday is the off day for a month, and then there'll be a month where it's Monday is the off day. JP Sears versus Shane Bieber, Kyle Mueller versus Hunter Gaddis. I'm going to favor Cleveland in every single one of these games, in spite of, Mueller didn't pitch poorly, but this is a weak Oakland team. If we did a quick position by position value, Langoliers versus Nino, right now, you would probably call it a toss-up because Nino is really killing the ball in the early going. We'll see how long that stays. Langoliers has had a few struggles. You go to first base. Jesus Aguilar. Josh Naylor, advantage Cleveland. Moving to second base. We don't even really need to talk. Tony Kemp, advantage Cleveland. Moving to shortstop. Almides Diaz, who's mostly been a backup for his career, versus Rosario, advantage Cleveland. Moving to third base. Jose Ramirez versus Jace Peterson, advantage Cleveland. Move to center field. Estuary Ruiz versus Miles Straw. Right now that's advantage Cleveland because Cleveland has the better defense there, and neither of them are exactly hitting a ton. You move to left field. Seth Brown versus Stephen Kwan, advantage Cleveland, though Seth Brown is probably their best hitter. Move to right field. Ramon Lariano versus Oscar Gonzalez. I might give advantage to Oakland there. And then your DHs. Connor Capel had a few, but I think Brent Rooker was the primary one. That's going to be advantage Cleveland with Josh Bell. So Cleveland just dominates position by position in this matchup. They've got a much better bullpen. The rotation's stronger. You really need to leave this weekend series taking all 3, not weekend series, I'm sorry. Leave this 3-game series taking all 3 of these games against a very weak Oakland Athletics team. There's no point in a really deeper preview. This is one of the 5 worst teams in baseball. The Oakland Athletics are set up to be in a long-term rebuild. They've added some weird pieces in there, like Jesus Aguilar, but I feel like Seth Brown will get traded. Ramon Lariano will get traded. A lot of these guys will get traded. They're like a Cleveland-esque position a year ago, where they're going to have a ton of young players debuting, But at the same time, this is still a team starting a 32-year-old Jace Peterson, a 31-year-old Tony Kemp, a 30-year-old Seth Brown, a 32-year-old Almeides Diaz. They're not going all in. They're starting a lot of guys in their early 30s, and it's a really silly situation. And I don't know how much faith, if you're an Oakland fan, do you have in that rebuild when Soderstrom, maybe he works out, but a lot of the other high picks, you're not hearing about him. Some of those draft picks for a team that has been picking in the first round, doesn't give up their first rounder, doesn't go out and trade away a ton of prospects. They're kind of weak right now, especially when we consider they have traded for a ton of prospects. So this Oakland team, I'm still going to be a little bitter, if one can't tell, about the missing out on Sean Murphy for the weird valuation that Oakland places on players. And it just doesn't seem to match up with the rest of the league or baseball in general. So yeah, you got to take all 3 games. Anything less is a disappointment. But what will not leave you disappointed are our good friends over at Built Bar. And Built Bar right now is doing the what they call their March Madness celebration. And I've gone through and discussed all the flavors that you can try. I think they do coconut very well. And I voted for the coconut ones in this competition. Why did I vote? Because if you go and you vote for your favorite bar or puff, my old co-host wants to come into view. You're entered in a drawing where 50 Locked On listeners get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one lucky listener of Locked On will get a 12-month subscription to Built. Get a full year of Built for free, delivered monthly straight to your door. You gotta try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're amazing, and you won't think they're good for you. What makes them so good? Well, for starters, they are all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Run to Built Bar, marchmadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in, support your pick, and get more entries in that drawing. BuiltBar.com. Remember that promo code we have there is LOCKED15. So something I always like to do on this show, we talked about the 3 big wins, a 3-1 team right now, riding high with a very weak team on the schedule for the next 3. And then after that, it's more Seattle. So time for Seattle to try to get some revenge coming up. But, they'll have the off day Thursday, Seattle, and then the New York Yankees. And then after that, it really opens up. The schedule gets so much easier for Cleveland. But what we've always liked to do on the show is take some time when players are let go, specifically often minor league players, because they didn't necessarily get their day in the sun, a time to shine. Cleveland, when they did all their roster moves, we'll have to see what happens with Jason Billis yet. We'll still have to see what the return for Owen Miller is going to be. It's still the great unknown question. And speaking of Milwaukee, they just promoted former University of Cincinnati outfielder Joey Weimer to their roster. A really interesting, toolsy guy who just couldn't put together in college. And interesting to bet on those types. I'm going to save the most interesting guy they released for last in this discussion. Hardest one to get information on was Mike Garcia, because if you type Cleveland Mike Garcia pitcher, it's the other guy. It's not. It's one of the greatest players in Cleveland history. It is not this guy who is a 22-year-old right-handed pitcher, 6'4", 211, big guy who never got out of rookie ball. Makes sense if you're moving on from a guy there signed back in 2016. Just didn't come together for him. Not a whole lot on him there. The next player that I had the least amount of familiarity with in terms of the players let go was Marlon Made or Made. I know I should probably know him, but he's another one of those players that just never really popped for me. He got some spring training experience, but he was 21 years old, and last year he was a backup in Carolina. 162, 215, 189. Yeah, that's not going to get you a spot. So the 21-year-old player for the Dominican Republic, left-handed outfielder, is also a roster casualty. I kind of am surprised it took them this long. I thought we'd see a few more players get let go. Feel bad for Angel Lopez, a 13th round pick in the 2017 amateur draft from Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It's a round that they do place some value in, but he was the good organizational soldier. through 5 seasons in the minors, he only appeared in 127 games. But he was the guy they moved all over. Played across multiple levels, mostly serving as a backup. Only 14 games a year ago. He just couldn't hit his weight. There just wasn't enough there. It just was not enough. Solid backup catcher, but they got more catching in the system. They moved on from Lopez, but he did everything that was asked of him in his short time. Well, not short, 5 years in Cleveland's minor league system, 6 if you count the COVID season that he was a part of the team. Alex Royalty is interesting because he was an 8th rounder from UNC Wilmington, and I believe he got a pretty decently sized bonus. I was kind of surprised by that at the time. 6'3", 200 pounds. I believe there were health issues that also limited him. He just was not super effective last year in Double-A or High-A. Only 11 starts for him. 2019, he had 25 starts, and then 2018 is the year he was drafted. He had 9 that season, and he could miss some bats. And again, he was a big kid, but I believe you look at his peak. His first few seasons he missed bats, then it kind of faded. Last year he was at like 7.7 per 9 with a 3.5 walk per 9. There wasn't a high differentiator for him in terms of success or a pathway to overall success. Yeah, he got $155,900. So this isn't one of those situations where for a guy who is 4 years out from his draft year, 5 years, he pitched essentially 3 years in the minors. A little bit surprising, but he's just a victim of the depth. He might pick up with another organization, but they had too many guys in the upper minors, and he had nowhere to go. And I thought the most interesting one was Aaron Pinto, because they sent him out to the Fall League. And I thought it was this past year. Maybe it was 2 years ago they sent him out to the Fall League. He's been around. Like, he was a 4-year player in college, 24th rounder in 2018. So we're talking 5 years in the minor league system. Stony Brook, and his overall numbers in the minors were solid. He bats left, throws right. If he threw left, he'd probably have made the big leagues by now. But across his minor league career, 11.3 strikeout per 9, 3.2 walk per 9. Last year, 11.7 and 5.4. Go back the year before that, 14 and 2.7. He was one of those intriguing guys that you were kind of curious if there could be any more, what else he could do. Again, he'll probably find a home. I think he'll have no problems finding a new place to pitch as a depth arm, but Cleveland just has so many guys that Pinto is, the victim of being in a deep system. He was, amongst all the players who let go, the most surprising. So why did he get let go? Well, you look at AAA right now. You got Adam Scott, who didn't pitch. I think he might be hurt. Touki Toussaint, Connor Pilkington, Dan Norris, Kyle Marmon, Michael Kelly, Philip Deal, Brett Daniels, Caleb Barringer, Peyton Batenfield, Tanner Bybee, who we talked about on the show, making it. It's a pretty loaded group. Johan Romero, who they just added. That's the thing. Not only was it already a super loaded group, but then they went out and added guys like Barringer, Brett Daniels, Philip Deal. They added a lot of vets. And those vets squeezed out someone like Aaron Pinto. I watched a little bit of Friday's game. I was trying to go back and forth. Side note, what did MLB do with their app? Like, watching videos, watching clips, watching games, and just game day itself. They had a great system, and instead they went in and made it a terrible system. I don't know what is wrong with MLB. It's really annoying what they did. I don't know why they did it that way, but it's an issue to me. I think the game day app was so much better. I don't know why they felt the need to change it so much. You had something that worked. Why mess with it? But that's about it for this solo show tonight. I want to thank everyone who commented. Seattle fans really jumped in there after that win, and then got very quiet after that. But we appreciate the Seattle fans. They'd come in and juice our numbers quite a bit. It is clear that is a thirsty fan base. It is a fun team. Listen, they could come to town and easily sweep Cleveland. It's going to be a hot competition with those two teams, because those are two very strong teams in baseball. And for all of my concerns about Kelenic, he hit this week, and Wong kept hitting. We'll see about the defense. But yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see, what comes together, because there are some question marks on both these teams. If we went back and looked at Cleveland, I'd close the one about their offensive performers. The worst hitter for Cleveland right now is Oscar Gonzalez. It's early, very early, but does that mean you lead towards Brennan? I'm curious to see what they will do. Kind of fascinated with how Cleveland is going to handle that situation, because again, a year ago, Oscar Gonzalez forced his way into their plans. Can he maintain that velocity? Is he going to be someone who rewrites his story or not? So I can't wait to see how that works out. But near the end of the show here, just going to say, rate and review, download daily. It helps. Whatever podcast platform you use to download, make sure to leave a review and download every day. Like, subscribe, comment on the YouTube. I respond to every first comment. It's hard to respond, keep getting into conversations, but every first comment you'll get some kind of response from me. Thank you for listening, and go Guardians, go. And again, sorry for a few bits of weirdness. Had some tech issues tonight, but thank you again. Go Guardians, go.